Hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar titled The Power of Automation, Enhancing Customer Experience and Crafting Seamless Journeys, presented by Newgen. Today we have with us Soumya Dwivedi, partner and expert on the insurance domain from Deloitte. From Newgen we have Shantanu Tiwari, the head of Center of Excellence for Insurance. I am Aman Chawla and shall be your host for today. All of us today are going to understand from these industry veterans about how the insurance industry is shaping up in today's day, an age of AI where demand for a super experience and personalized insurance products is increasing day by day. So let me first invite Shantanu to share his views.
Sure, Aman, thank you so much. Okay, I hope my screen is visible. Aman, can you confirm that for me?
Yes, Shantanu, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so as Aman has just highlighted, the focus on the session today is around um, customer experience and how the insurance industry is looking at a complete revamp of the insurance journeys. So obviously, of late there has been a lot of focus and importance in the insurance organization giving to um, you know the insurance the customer journeys, and the need to relook at the ways the insurance journeys are currently drawn, mainly because of the fact that unlike their banking peers, the customers of an insurance company are still deprived of the type of experience which they are entitled to and which they expect in the current business scenario. And that is what has forced the insurance companies to relook at the ways various journeys are currently being drawn. Now, those journeys can be with regards to either buying a new policy, or it can be with regards to filing a claim, or even servicing an existing customer. Obviously, if we look at the insurance industry today, at an inflection point because there are huge changes which is happening, in the market from a regulatory standpoint, from a technology standpoint. So if you look at it, customers are now becoming increasingly demanding and digital savvy. Gone are the days when the insurance company's customer always relied on an agent to interact with the insurance company. Now we are all living in a digital age wherein the expectation of the customer from a digital standpoint is extremely high. Even in scenarios where the customer interacts with an insurance company through an intermediary like an agent, still there has to be a level of digital enablement that needs to come in those interactions, which is generally missing in the current scenario. For the carriers, obviously, the market is becoming much more complex now. Uh, to deal with the competition, they need to offer a huge mix of product varieties, which at the same time increases a lot of complexity of their operations. So for an insurance company, one of the biggest challenges that how do they streamline and you know uh, revamp their operations so that their processing efficiencies reach a much higher level than what they are if they have to be profitable. Another key challenge is the advent of technologies, and especially insurtechs, which are now with their digital initiatives, with their next level of customer experience, are making huge inroads, specifically when it comes to the young generation of the market. And that is where it's a lot of pressure that the conventional or the traditional insurance companies are now facing from these new generation insurtechs. And last but not the least, the costs are rising, and so the underwriting and the claims functions are always in scrutiny. I mean, um, they have to ensure that there's a balance between the risk that they are assessing, at the same time the premiums that they are charging, which is a very thin line, or the margin of error there is very thin. So they are under constant pressure and they require a lot of technology support, if they have to underwrite or if they have to adjudicate a claim rightly. Having said that, while there are so much challenges, but at the same time, the market, especially the Indian market, is looking at a huge, demand gap, and there is a lot of scope for all the insurance companies. I mean, in terms of the mortality protection gap, as per IRD itself, there's almost close to 40.4 billion deficit which exists. So it's a huge market, and IRDA is now focusing heavily on the insurance for all aspiration, which is also, from their side, a lot of investment into technology to make this objective achievable. So which presents a whole set of opportunities for the insurance companies as well. Just going slightly deeper into the expectations that the current set of customers have. Obviously, as I said, the expectations are rising, way beyond that than what it has ever been. You know, Almost 78% of the customers now expect personalized services in their insurance experience. Um, you cannot have a standard messaging that needs to go out. Whatever messaging needs to go out to a customer has to be personalized, has to be as per the needs and demands of the customer, which in turn means that we need to understand our customers much better. The ecosystem is changing rapidly. While agencies and banks remain the top channel for new business, and they will remain, because insurance as an industry would always need that manual support for the customer, to either buy a policy or to get servicing. But at the same time, digital is going to expand, and that is where it is going to become one of the preferred channel, if not the preferred channel, for the customer. Now, criticality of touch points, this is a very important factor, because unlike banks, which with which the insurance with which the customers interact, if not daily, then at least once in 2 or 3 days, the interaction frequencies between an insurance company and the customer is very less. Maybe once or twice a year. Once you buy a policy, probably the only time that you reach out to them is buying a claim. And that becomes very important, that that singular touch point is the one which gives the perfect experience for the customer, so that he continues with the insurance companies for a longer period of time. And as I said, digital is going to be huge going forward, which basically means that not just in buying, but even in servicing. And then, obviously the competitive threat is increasing day by day. And that is where the recall factor becomes very important. And insurance companies are now realizing that, for them, acquisition going forward is going to be a challenge. And that is where retention has to be the top priority. Now, for that retention to happen, the experience again becomes one of the critical drivers. And that is where the role of technology going forward is going to be very important. And that is where, this disruption is something which is the need of the hour, which the insurance companies must embrace. And that in turn will transform the way that they are currently working. So as I was saying, policy issuance, when you talk about, it's not just a transaction, it is first of hopefully many experiences that your prospects and customers will have with the insurance company. So that is where the experience throughout this journey has to be seamless. And when it comes to buying a new policy, there are multiple abandonment points which lies within the journey. Now, as an insurance company, how do I ensure that you know at any point of abandonment, can the customer actually continue seamlessly the journey from where he has left? That is one. And secondly, even if you have to follow up a customer for completing a journey, it has to be done in a much more intelligent manner, rather than just bombarding him with multiple reminders, which obviously makes his experience not pleasant, but rather it drives away the customer from the insurance company. And that is where, how do you sort of fill this gap? How do you leverage the data? How do you know when a customer has to be sort of connected back, which type of customer has to be connected back? The answer to all these questions lies in the data which is already available with the insurance company. Now, how that has to be utilized intelligently is if and effectively is where technology is going to play a big role going forward. Now, same lies with the claims as well. Claim settlement ratios, for any insurance company, this has become a benchmark now. That is now driving the customers buying cycle, and which is where once it reaches below a certain threshold, it gets into a war zone. And this becomes very important, because claims are the actual moment of truth. This is where the customer is going to realize the actual uh, experience. Obviously, buying experience is also very important, but then this is where the customer is always looking for that um, feeling of empathy, that feeling of connectedness, that as an insurance company you really care about your customer. That is the feeling that a customer can only get from a very seamless claims experience. And a point solution approach would not take you anywhere, because the more the bricks are in any of these journeys, the lesser is the experience for the customer. And that is what exactly the next point is, which I would try to highlight is, there are too many drivers for any insurance companies. Those drivers are internal, those drivers are external. Now, how these dots are seamlessly connected is the key to success. From a business standpoint, you'll always have risk management as something which needs to be evaluated perfectly. Profit margins are constantly under stress. Persistency, as I was saying, has become one of the critical talking points for most of the insurance companies. Regulatory compliance, whatever you do, you still need to comply to the compliances. From a technology standpoint, it's a huge technology debt. I mean, if we look at the insurance companies, the first wave of transformation, took almost, probably 10 to 15 years back, and many of those technical debts are still continuing. You need speed of change, modernization costs that needs to be controlled. From a customer, as I was saying, experience, speed, pricing, all these are critical factors. So if you look at it, it is not a piecemeal approach to automating these individual pointers, but rather a layer which is able to connect all these things seamlessly is something which is the need of the hour. And digital is not just about having one piece of component working right. For example, you might have a great mobile interface or a digital front-ending portal for a customer through which you can collect the data. But then what happens post collection of the data in any journey is what is driving the experience. So for example, when it comes to buying a policy, you can enter the data, you can upload documents, which again is an overhead. If you look at the current situation, I mean, the way, one of the major reasons why insurance companies are failing to go digital, at least in life insurance, for the buying journey, is a huge amount of data that it is expected from the customer to be entered, which is not a practical thing. Now, even if that is done, any post submission interaction is still hugely driven by emails. There is no seamless, technology enabler which ensures that the customer is able to respond back, you know satisfy any requirements in a very seamless manner. And those, post facto interactions are the critical factors which actually drive the customer experience and your connectedness to the customer. And that is where, it has become imperative now for any of the insurance company is to take the leap. I mean, the conventional methods of issuing the policy or claims processing would not be holding any relevance going forward. What is needed is a seamlessly connected digital journey, where the customer is enabled to a greater extent than what he is right now. At the same time, you know the operations is also working in a manner which makes their task easier. One of the critical factors for that is how easily accessible is the data and details to the operations team, like your underwriters. That again becomes one of the critical factors. So a fully automated onboarding journey and policy issuance, that has become very important. As I said, data is going to be one of the key driving factors across these journeys, whether it is fraud, whether it is risk assessment, whether it is exception handling. And that is where these journeys needs to be digitally much more AI driven now, instead of being conventional. Integration of variables. So as I said, probably it is not just about the internal data, but there is a lot of data available externally as well. And there are technology enablers which insurance companies have invested on a piecemeal basis. For example, many of the insurance companies use certain software to do a facial analysis, but what happens to the analysis that comes? Probably you are just using it as a data point to be shown to an underwriter, which is still fine, but this can be used to a much greater extent, wherein you can actually make the entire job of the customer filling up the proposal form much more easier by auto populating a lot of details around it. With variables, with facial analysis tool, you can auto identify a lot of his lifestyle patterns, and that can come automatically. Similarly, nowadays we have, uh, Abha is coming up in a big way, Ayushman Bharat. So from that you can get a lot of medical records from the for the customer, which sort of makes his life much more easier, instead of filling up a big medical questionnaire, which is an overhead for him. Nobody likes filling up 20-25 questions to buy a intangible product like insurance. So those are the critical factors which needs to be looked at. And how do you ensure that you're not looking just as an STP issuance, but rather as an insta issuance? Now, probably the industry earlier was divided into STP and non-STP issuance. Now STP has gone further into two stages. One is Insta, which can be an instant policy issuance as the first point of interaction. And even if it is not Insta, it can still be STP, which basically means that you can still issue the policy at a later point of time, but with minimal intervention from the operations team. So while digital aspects from a customer are important, but at the same time, it is equally important that the load on operations needs to be reduced. And for that to happen, we need to see that how many of those cases can be issued with minimal or no intervention from the operations team. When it comes to claims, again, probably if we have to take an example of a motor claim, how do you ensure that your FNOL journeys are much more seamless? Can there be mechanisms wherein you can actually do an instant cash settlement by analyzing the risk associated, with a claim? For example, you have data coming in uh, through connected cars, a lot about driving patterns. You can do a auto damage assessment through computer vision. So all these data elements can actually ascertain whether a claim is eligible to be paid an instant cash settlement. Even if it is not, do you actually require a conventional process of somebody going to a garage to do an assessment? Is it actually required? Probably there are mechanisms wherein the evaluation can go to the handler, who can then look at the computer vision assessment, and then based on the confidence level, take a call of settling it without requiring any physical survey, which actually helps, because then you are actually cutting down on the time required. So if you talk about motor claims, one of the biggest uh, factors which lowers the experience of any customer is the fact that his vehicle is going to be stuck in a garage for 4 to 5 days, which is where work needs to be done. So with all these things, if you can actually bring it down to, let's say, a 1 or 2 day thing, or maybe an instant thing, you say that you take the money, you get it repaired yourself, that is something which sometimes the customer prefers. So these are the things which actually would help elevate the experience of the customer rather than conventional uh, mechanisms. But at the same time, it is all about getting the best of both worlds to the customer, and that is where the phygital concept becomes equally important. So while, as I was saying earlier, digital is going to be big, but at the same time, you can't discount the fact that at least in an industry like insurance, there would always be an element of physical, or documents being flowing through, whether it is buying a new policy or processing the claim. So any platform needs to support both these mechanisms so as to ensure that the overall experience for a customer, whether it is a digital journey, whether it is a physical journey, is seamless. And for the operations team, even if it's the physical case, how do you ensure that from the documents you get the relevant information from bureaus, from external world? How do you get the documents and present to him in a consolidated manner, is what is going to drive the experience of your operations user as well. And obviously, how do you increase his efficiency becomes another important aspect. Now obviously, to achieve whatever I was saying, there's a huge set of technology upgrade that the insurance company would need. And obviously, this entire orchestration works uh, through multiple drivers driving this engine. So obviously, if you have to design uh, you know digital journeys for your customers, you need to have an interface designing tool which can actually design these mobile apps, these portals which are easy to use, which makes the experience of the customer very seamless in any digital interaction with the insurance company. Then obviously you need to have a journey orchestration framework which ensures that the entire journey is seamlessly connected, which needs, and a very important factor in this is the integration framework, because any seamless journey would require integration, not just upstream but also downstream. So you'll have a lot of data flowing in from external data sources, you will have data coming in from internal data sources. At the same time you'll also be leveraging to integrate with a lot of insurtechs which are providing specific intelligence which needs to be leveraged as part of the bigger connected journey. So I think those becomes the critical factors. Rule engine, one of the old world things but still very relevant, because while the rules would obviously be there, I think the most important factor that any company is looking at these days is how do they maintain the rules much more easier, how do they reduce the dependencies on IT to sort of manage the rules at the end of business itself. So that is where a very robust and easy to use rule engine is still one of the critical factors which drives these automation journeys. Content and communication management, again one of the very critical factors, because as I was saying, uh, irrespective of the level of digitization that you achieve, there is always going to be content. Now that content can be in the form of emails coming through, it can be in the form of document coming through. So how seamlessly the content needs to be managed is very critical. And the same goes with communication. And again, the communication that needs to go out at any point in any journey has to be much more personalized. It needs to convey the message which needs to be conveyed to that specific individual customer and not a generic message. And I think that is where communication itself is going to see a whole revamp in terms of how those are designed, those are delivered, and those are structured. AIML, I think it is the heart of any journey now. I mean, it has to be there. All your journeys needs to be powered from through AI. And uh, as I was saying, there's data available internally. There's a rich data available internally with any insurance organization, and there's a lot of data available in the external world as well, which can be leveraged rightly to sort of impact these journeys as multiple standpoints. So for example, in life insurance, the entire need analysis and product recommendation, which typically happens through a very standard grid based approach, is of no use in the current structure. And that is where AI can actually make a lot of impact, because it can actually profile the customer, identify what his right life goals are, and then based on it, what is the right coverage and price that needs to go out to it. Now to do that, obviously you need data with respect to his financial capability, his social profile, his existing exposure, and all these data elements are available. It's just about using it and applying intelligence on top of it. So these are the key drivers. And uh, Newgen One, which is the consolidated platform, takes pride in being one of the only players which is providing all these capability as part of one single framework, and that is why it's known as Newgen One. So within Newgen One, you'll have capabilities to orchestrate your journeys, design your interfaces, define rules, define data models internally, manage your content, communication. So it's an all-encompassing tool, which and it's the only tool in the industry which is able to do all these things seamlessly, under one hood. I'll skip this. And I think that is where Newgen One is playing a critical role, or is going to play a critical role going forward as well, in terms of plugging a lot of gaps in automation, whether it is around policy documentation, whether it is about how do you make your engagement with the customer much more personalized and need specific and empathetic. I think this is again very important. As I was saying, how do you, for example, again taking an example of motor claims, I mean, if you can actually um, connect to a customer. So if you look at the claims journey is actually starting at the time of claim. Why can't it happen even prior to that in terms of claim prevention, which is not just a good step for the insurance company, it is also an empathetic support that the customer needs, and it makes them feel that the insurance company is really concerned about it. So for example, on a rainy day, when it is difficult driving situation, you can just probably send out a message to a specific user group who belong to a slightly risky category, saying that probably today is a difficult day to drive, and probably you need to take care of certain precautions, which is the type of engagement that is currently missing in the insurance company, partly because of the fact, as I was saying earlier, it's a low interaction industry. You don't get to interact with your customer way often, and that is where you need to find ways and means of connecting him so that his recall factor with the insurance company is much higher. Fraud detection, very important. I think that is going to play a key role, and that is where AI is already playing, and it's going to play a much bigger role in terms of being a much more automated, or much more accurate fraud detection. Automated underwriting, I think I've already talked about it in detail. Data is going to be a critical driver for this. Uh, Integration with the ecosystem, I think medical being one of it, but then it is not just about medical, it is about the existing policies of the customer, it is about his financial details. How do you connect with all these things so as to create a seamless experience for any customer is very important. A similar examples is for motor claims as well, that how do you probably plug all these gaps. So eventually, I think what is very important is how do you ensure that through a right set of automation from a technology like Newgen One, how are you going to drive cost efficiencies? Probably how do you make the interaction much more personalized? So personalization impact is going to be one of the key drivers for any of these journeys. I think that is, I think, is the way insurance industry is going to become much more individualized now, rather than a generalist industry, which was the case earlier. And eventually the customer engagement, how do you engage, how much do you engage with your customer with the right messaging is going to be the key factor. And the future of the firm lies obviously in an end-to-end automation. You need a technology which is basically connecting all these dots together. So it's not the technology, the automation doesn't exist, but it is all spread across, it is all sort of all over the place. And that is where the true realization of the technology is still not there. Finally, to conclude, I think just some of the key things that we've been able to achieve through the Newgen platform, for the insurance transformation in general, which is obviously a more holistic transformation across onboarding, servicing, and claims. As I said, servicing is still one of the lesser looked area, and that is where a lot of impetus is now being given to fintech and insurtech ready integration. So we are now coming with pre-integrated uh, set of solutions wherein we are bringing in a lot of intelligence from specific insurtechs. We are bringing in data through a lot of fintechs which are being used seamlessly across these journeys. So for an end customer, it's a hassle-less experience. They don't need to sort of separately integrate with any of these things that already are available in the platform pre-built. Treatment of e-journey in totality, it's the complete thing, right from the customer standpoint and from an operational standpoint. So it's not just about digital, it is equally about operations as well. So it is, when we look at these journeys, we look at it in complete totality. Retention, I think, one of the critical factors, not just in servicing but even in new business, because if you're able to sell right, you'll obviously be able to retain your customer as well. And finally, a personalized communications across touch point is what is going to hold a lot of key going forward. Thank you. I think this is what I wanted to share on my thoughts in terms of how customer journeys are now being revamped, and how the customer experience is going to be changed going forward. And that's the way going forward for any insurance company.
Thanks, Shantanu, for sharing your grateful insights. So over to Soumya.
So, thank you for inviting us. And while I was hearing Shantanu speaking about the different facets where automation can happen, I was more thinking about like bit longer term, right? I think how the insurer of future would look like, and how all of these automation capabilities would help it to succeed to become the insurance leader. So I was thinking about starting with, the characteristics that we see that the insurance leader of future would be. So I think if you see, there are five fundamental shifts that at least come to my mind. One is that, I think We believe that it would be a customer-centric organization. Customer-centric, we nothing today. Most of the insurance companies' policy admin system and based on which the architecture is built are more product-centric or the policy-centric. So from that, there's a journey to be made to become a policyholder-centric, and it is not only on the back end but also the customer experience, and to kind of give more customized products and services. Again, to portfolio today, I think they are probably traditional, sometimes monoline, sometimes a bit more. From there, we see that the insurance companies with the diverse distribution arms that they have would probably kind of become a platform with a portfolio of diversified brands and products. And what it means is essentially that the underwriting paradigm need to change, where the insurers, the leaders would be more competitive and innovative in taking or selecting the right risks. And for that, I think an automation would enable syncing with the alternative data, which would be helping to kind of write the risk and manage the risk more proactively. And the risk scenario is quite evolving. Like climate is a great example, like we're talking about today. So how do you kind of ensure that you're continuously innovating on the process becomes important? And linked to that is the product innovation. Today, I think there's a longer time to market, and now, I think with even the regulator is driving for more innovation, there would be kind of much more automation that will be coming in creating the product, configuring in different systems. And at some point of time, you might be, a point you would be probably manufacturing the products specifically for a particular channel or a particular, organization. And that's when I think the scalability of the platform becomes very important. And last but not least, the process, which would be, I think today there's a lot of manual intervention in the process, which should hopefully kind of result into almost a no or low touch operations going forward. And all of these are accelerated by five big forces. First and most important is probably the customers. Second is the I think ecosystems of the fintechs, and that's what Shantanu is talking about. Deep integration is very important so that you can build on the niche capabilities of the insurtechs. Third is, I think there is, of course, the market pressure from the consumer, from the regulator, from the competitors to test and launch new products and serve the markets with excellent customer standards. And then, I think comes the parameter about the entire evolution which is happening on the data and tech world. So we're talking about how automation, and along with automation, a very related topic is, I think how the use of data is going to power the automation, and we're talking about GenAI, which has been the buzzword in the last year. And last but not the least, all the insurers are looking for profitable growth, and all of that hopefully would drive towards that. But of all the things, which is more important, and if we come to the next page, I think the most important is the customers. And we're talking about that. What are some of the, today, the friction points? There are quite a lot. And I think I'm just giving insurance an example. Insurance, think about health insurance. The quantum is different. The pain points are probably different places, right? But you'd be seeing that I think there are some broken customer journeys if you think about buying or kind of getting the services, right? You would see that I think there are oodles of forms being filled, maybe multiple times, and where I think there could be potential to kind of drive much more automation there, right? And even I think the back end, the underwriting process or the claims process or the customer service process, there are opportunity to kind of improve the turnaround time as well as the accuracy of the solution that you give to the customers and yourselves, right? And I think if this is the kind of shift that you want to make based on I think how globally you'll be seeing the customer trends are happening, then I think you really need to think different. And five big things that is seeing I think broadly I think about the customer trends. One is hyper personalization. Give me a product or market to me a product which is for me. Second, always on. I do not like to kind of be restricted by the working hours of yours. If I want to kind of buy a policy at 12 a.m., then I would be able to kind of get that. C, transparency. If I buy a pizza, I know that okay, at a minute where the delivery person is. If I kind of buy an insurance, I understand it may take some time, but I want to know that okay, where it is in terms of the overall process. Convenience, what channel that you choose, I may actually choose digital, I may choose physical, but I think that's up to me. And I think the opportunity is to kind of make it uber convenient for the customers. And last but not the least is that, the customers are value conscious. They have always been. But I think right now, if you see, the brand loyalty is not as high. I think because they would be open to kind of multiple options, and they would be open to kind of look for value in each of the options. So it is not a good to have, but it is almost kind of, I think a necessity to survival in that context to really, solve for some of the spend points and also give the customers a future ready experience that they're expecting and they are experiencing across multiple other industries in FS or even beyond FS, right? So going next, I think the way we spoke a lot about the customer experience, right? But I think customer experience in an industry like insurance, which is not completely self-service or digital, requires, I think, significant amount of distributor or intermediary enablement, like be it agent, be it the banker channel, be it the broker. So I think how do you kind of think about like making that journey and their experiences seamless so that they can provide a seamless experience for the customers? And the last but not the least is the operational efficiency. Operational efficiency will drive distributor enablement, customer experience, but it will also drive employee experience of these insurance companies. And finally, as we spoke about in a profitable growth ambition, it would drive a lot of, I think, the cost efficiency in the organization. And how the organizations are doing this, of course, they are innovating across different business models, different type of distribution partners, ecosystems, but underlying is the tech enablement and the data and analytics, which is powering the tech enablement. And that's where the automation actually comes there to kind of help solve some of these problems. I do not want to kind of go to, and we have a few more examples. If you kind of think about the next page, you're talking about the example of the customers, I think what are the different automation opportunities across onboarding to policy issuance to servicing to claims to renewals, right? And there are, for example, right, and I think just onboarding, like I would like to kind of know which is the policy best for me, and that could be automated, trigger generated based on I think my profile, and that profile could be even sourced from different data sources that is there, so that I don't need to kind of pre-fill it out of the form. Within a minute, I actually know that okay, this is the best policy for me. Uh, Thinking about like policy issuance, we're talking about I think the OTC policy issuance. We're talking about as much of I think the policies that could be going through the STP route, and that really requires a lot of integration. I think of the entire backend process flow of the underwriting workbench and the data that comes from the origination systems. The customer service we spoke about. I think the policy. The claims, the processing, as well as I think thinking about how do you drive I think the automation on 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 in all the kind of basic insurers are right now doing a lot of experiments on the complete automations that claim journey becomes as smooth as it could be. And if you look at some really trying to make that as a single point USP to drive a customer base, I think which is probably at more, of like new age millennials and so on and so forth. So, and similarly, I think if you go to the next page, we'll see that there is a lot of the automation potential as we think about for the distributors, right? So for the distributors, I think there are multiple steps that they need to take, to kind of issue a policy along with the customers. It starts with, kind of generating the awareness. In many cases, the awareness could be generated digitally. The outreach, and again, the connecting the customers with the right multiple steps that you need to take, right? And while it looks, I think the power of automation and integration is to kind of make it as seamless as buying, buying through any e-commerce platform, any basic products and services that you can buy, right? Agent who is, I think, right in front of the customer, in a minute can or in a second could tell the customers that this is the right thing for him. And same thing for the rewards and recognition. A, that having the right visibility. B is that ability for the organizations to do the entire process of setting incentives on a more automated fashion, that to drive A, organizational efficiency, and B, more transparency to the distributors. So all in all, automation is going to be a win-win solution for every part of the value chain. So, I think the way we think about it, that it starts with, initializing the entire thought process, then, I think operationalize, and then institutionalize, right? Now, for each of the case, the initialization requires, I think thinking about the right use cases. It think about, I think the right governance mechanism, the ownership of the business to drive result. It is not alone a technology project. It is going to be, a successful automation is a marriage between a business problem which is solved by the right technology platform and the data enabling that particular technology platform. Then, I think the operationalization, how do you kind of build the capability? How do you kind of ensure that the delivery and the mechanism for supporting the automation that happens in an institutionalizing manner, that becomes an important part. In many cases, the organizations architect of COE. In many cases, it actually ensures that an external partnership at a corporate level to kind of drive that thing, so that you can get the benefit of the scale in a much faster manner. So again, if you just crystallize three key success factors that really helps in organizations who are on an extreme automation journey. A is that establishing a strong business case and aligning with all the key stakeholders. That becomes important. Second is learning from the best. So when you do a distinction between the operationalization and institutionalization, you learn from your own organization, you learn from the other organizations that what is the best way to deliver, and this is going to be elevating the experience to make insurance, as an industry which would be known for the customer experience rather than the opposite. So I'd like to take a pause questions in this forum.
Yeah, yeah, Swami. Thanks for sharing your grateful insights from your end. So we have a few questions from the audience. The first question is for Shantanu. So the question is what are the potential automation areas over and above the core platforms for insurers to take up? Shantanu, if you can answer this question.
Sure, sure. So there are multiple use cases of automation, obviously, that any organizations can undertake. Obviously, there are, always those, known areas of underwriting and claims, which anyway are going to be very important in terms of revamping them, because uh, as I was talking about earlier as well, onboarding is the one which is actually driving your sales, and claims is your moment of truth. So those becomes the critical factors. And it is not just about automating, as Soumya was rightly mentioning, it is about elevating the experience of the customer across these journeys is the most important factor. But having said that, while these are, the known areas, one of the things which has gained a lot of prominence over the period of time is servicing, because that is where, you most of the insurance companies are still, relying on old world methods of, probably um, a request being ingested through a call center, absolute no clarity to the customer as to what is happening to his service request. Now if somebody have to, submit multiple requests in one go, how do they do that? And those are the factors which actually drive the customer experience from a retention standpoint. If you're not able to service your customer well, you would not be able to hold on to him for a pretty long time. Now even in life insurance, which is supposedly a long-term insurance, customers have this tendency of switching over, maybe even if that means a monetary loss to them if they are not satisfied with the services of the customer. So I think, probably servicing, I think, is going to be a key factor. And um, a lot of it is now going to be also proactive. Now servicing traditionally has always been looked, from a reactive perspective, wherein a customer reaches to you and then you respond back. But this entire game is now going to change. The insurance company may do a lot of proactive servicing, with knowing so much about the customer now. So probably if you have a customer, his patterns of behavior, you can sort of ascertain that, probably what's the risk associated with him. So it can be, probably looking at his profile, there's a high chance that he may drop off the next year. So which may mean that you may want to give him a very personalized offer, that would, even if that means downgrading his current plan, even that works well, because still you are able to sort of hold on to the customer. So that is where servicing, I think, is going to both proactive as well as reactive. That is going to hold a lot of prominence going forward.
I'm Shantanu. So the next question is for Soumya. So the question is, which type of insurers are most affected by the changing expectations of the millennials? Is it health, life, or motor insurance?
A very interesting question. And in fact, I would argue all. So if you think about it, the insurance journeys are different, and the intermediate used are sometimes very different. You know, auto is very different than life, also different from health, right? And the trigger points of buying insurances are also different, right? When you buy a vehicle, but after that, for the renewal, you need to kind of pay the policy. So I think you'll be there, right? Now, every occasion, I think for the millennial customers, all those five principles that you talked about, that becomes relevant, right? But if you think about motor, for example, right, there is lack of personalization, usage based, that I'm thinking about. But health, and on in, I think, whether it's the health cover for himself, or it's the family, because you're talking about millennial. I myself as a millennial think about those lines. That becomes important. That how personalization is here. But being always on, that's true for I think all three of them, right? And thinking about being flexible, being more transparent, more I think if you think about health as an example, right? That becomes very, very critical, because when you buy a motor, or to some extent, like life, which is more only protection, it's relatively simple. But on the health, there are lots of kind of uh, like riders, covers, what is the free liquidity, what is the time period for which you can potentially kind of get covered or not, right? Having said that, what one needs to be really kind of thoughtful about, that where do you want to kind of make investment fast, which I think back to the earlier question, it's in acquisition, or it is in the claims, or is it in the underwriting, or it is in the customer service. There is no clear answer. It depends on the on the specific organization life stage.
Yeah, Soumya. So next question is for Shantanu. So Shantanu, the question is, what core insurance platforms Newgen integrates with?
Okay. So see, obviously, we have a pedigree of integrating with multiple core platforms, whether it is the mainframe ones, or the usual suspects that you see in the insurance industry, which is systems from DXC like Life Asia, Ingenium in life insurance. Then we have banks. So these are the systems. There's a huge set of systems, but I think uh, what is equally important is just not about any specific system. It is about how do you um, ensure that integration, you have an integration catalog which is easily available, which is going to drive the time to roll out these journeys very fast. So I think that becomes very critical from any insurance company's perspective, and that is what Newgen provides. So it's a complete catalog of the various touch points which would be there with any of the core policy administration systems. So obviously the methodology may change, but eventual touch points in terms of what traditionally or what typically would be those points of interaction between a solution like Newgen and a solution like core systems are very well orchestrated, and they are very well defined as part of the catalog that we have, which enables our customer to sort of do these integrations much faster, irrespective of whichever core system they have. But yes, I mean, if you have to name, obviously I have named a few. There's a whole lot of list, like Oracle Policy Administration System, Guidewire. So we have sort of integrated with all of them.
Thanks, Omya. Thanks, Shantanu. So that's all I have for today. I thank everyone for joining us and making this session super insightful. Wish you all a great day ahead. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Aman. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.